Hello, lovely people. Welcome back to the Distinct and Jovial podcast. My name is Dom, and for the first time ever, I am not joined by my wonderful co-founder, Jerry. He is still alive, I do promise that. Still around, still alive and kicking, but we wanted to still put out a podcast, and this individual podcast that I'm going to do will explain a little bit, very vaguely, of why it's just me. And we'll talk a little bit about some other bits and pieces while we're here. So, I'm afraid to say, folks, just me today. As per normal, it's the 30th of January, which is one of the reasons why it's only me. We are cutting it as normal a bit fine. There's very fortunately 31 days in January, so that means that I am actually able to record this, and because I have new internet, although I'm still not somehow at 99% uploaded, I'm able to, do this last minute, get it edited, and I'll be able to upload it before Sunday. It's Friday, it's 8 o'clock at night on the 30th of January. This is episode number 56. This is going to count as an episode because it's going to go out on the first of the month at the normal time. And as always, these podcasts, the views on it are our own and don't represent anything or anyone that may be vaguely related to us, whether that be work or anything like that. So, as you can tell by the fact that I'm already breathing reasonably heavy, it's one of the reasons why we're not both on this podcast and both giving us the normal entertainment that you normally get on Distinct and Jovial as the podcast episode. So, both Jerry and I have had, there's no other way to put it, terrible news this month. January has felt, for me in particular, like a kick in the teeth every week. Unfortunately, we can't go into any of them. Some of them will relate to things that if they were put public, would put our success, shall we say, in jeopardy. But needless to say that we are both going through it. We're both being run ragged by life in general. And there's no specific thing, whether that's inside, outside work, whether that's to do with families and friends, with each other, with all those things. It just pertains to a lot, and myself particularly in these last 4 weeks I've been to the doctors 4 times in January. As you can probably hear by my breath, I'm not been well. We delayed this because I had a small cold, but it's transpired to be something a little bit more serious. So it's been a struggle. It really has. And unfortunately, the worst bit of news came the middle of this week. And Jerry just said that he wants to give a performance. He wants to entertain and be fulfilling to this. And he's like, I can't do it. And that's totally fine. And to be honest, I've kind of come on this podcast and I've set up a schedule that I want to go into. But I wanted to at least be open and honest with the audience of why there's only one of us on here. We're going to hope. I'm not even going to make the promise, but that's how much January has kicked our asses, that we will be back in March. It entirely depends on how things start to progress, and we can't go into it, but we'll make some plans. We will be back. I just can't guarantee that it'll be back to normal on the 1st of March. It may depend on other bits and pieces. We're both alive. We're not going to die imminently. Well, I don't know. I haven't had any results from my health appointments, so who knows? I don't think so. None of the doctors are worried, but they certainly are sort of like, yeah, we should get some stuff investigated. And yeah, we wanted to get something out that's consistent. We wanted to do this for you lot and go from there. So I could do with a bit more oxygen, as it may sound. You may not be able to hear it on the podcast, but those of you that watch will see me go, "Ooh." I could do with a bit more breath. Just been too late for us to recover. So we're still going to put this podcast out, and that's what I'm going to do. I thought, when I planned this podcast, I thought, do I just literally say that, right? Do I put out, it's now what, I've been recording for 5 minutes and 31 seconds. It'll be a bit shorter than that because I let the upload kind of get to a satisfactory position. And just leave it there and just say, really sorry, folks, we're done. I didn't think that's fair. And actually, selfishly, I thought, do you know what? This is a great opportunity for me to flex something that I find fun. Like this is a relief for me. The podcast is something that's fun. Now, it is fun because I get to spend usually 3 hours with my best mate, Jerry, talking about utter nonsense, normally delivering a bunch of opinions that sometimes excite, sometimes divide, sometimes cause Samwise to yell at her TV when we've both been idiotic and she thinks that we're both wrong. But that's why she just needs to come on the podcast again to tell us that we're both wrong. That's the type of, like, the things that we wanted to deliver. And I love it because I get to spend 3 hours with somebody I really care about and just talk utter bollocks. Great fun. But the whole point of why I wanted to start a podcast is because I felt like I had a lot more to say than what was letting on. And there's a deep-seated kind of, I don't know, is it my ego? Probably my ego. Let's be totally honest, it's probably my ego. Let's be totally honest about that. And I feel like I'm at the stage in life where I want that criticism. I want to engage in that debate. And so I'm going to use this as a bit of a personal podcast. I'm going to express a little bit of my opinion on events that are going around in the world that I feel like if I don't express, I may just explode. I may do that. And I'm not at risk now of not being allowed into certain countries by expressing this opinion. So I think I'm okay now, right? I'm not planning to travel to America. Hint, hint at what I may be talking about in this podcast. Also, I hinted at it a few... Last year, I really wanted to do an F1 podcast, like a separate one, and have Jerry on occasionally as a guest if he had the time, but have different people to talk about it. And I suspect that most of my friends are going to be, or most of the people that sit here and listen to this podcast today are going to be like, oh, really, F1? It's such a dull sport. But I love it. And I wanted to take an opportunity to maybe give a trial, right? A little bit of a trial of an F1 podcast that I'd like to do. Totally stolen ideas from other people, right? And honestly, if you're not interested, I will put in timestamps or something and say it's going to be roughly between then and then. Obviously, I can't tell at the beginning of the thing when it's going to be because I don't know how long it's going to be when I record it. But maybe I'll stick a post-production DOM in that bit that says the F1 bit goes until then. But I'm hoping that you'll be able to see me at my passionate, the thing that I find enjoyment. And F1 this year is so exciting. The secret testing, for those that can't see, I'm doing air quotes, where we've got such a big regulation change is currently happening, and I've never been more invested in my life, right? It's exciting and really want to talk about it. So I get to do a mini F1 podcast. In fact, in this podcast, I'm going to make some predictions, which means that when Jerry is back, I can get his reaction to it and we can, he can almost listen to this episode and hopefully when he comes back, he'll have some thoughts and probably tell me that I'm wrong. That's pretty standard. And the third, I set myself 3 goals for this podcast. The third is an ask from the audience. What do you want to see from us next? What is it that you think, I think Dom and Jerry where I know them would be really good at this? Is it more of the same? Do you like the guests? Do you not like the guests? Do you appreciate our poignant questions that are just about random topics that honestly most people doesn't give a monkey's about? Is it Room 101? Is it the blindly rates? Is it this? And I can go to many other podcasts and steal. I think actually that's what all content is about, is just I'm going to steal the content from somebody else and be done with it. But perhaps it's just time to get a bit of audience participation. Are you an audience member that would like to come on as a guest? What would you like to bring? What exciting things can you talk to us about? Whether that's Jerry with the fragrance questions, or whether we've got Pete with his D&D explanations, Chat Stevie T is forever and infinitesimally just so interesting to talk to. Hooper is the one I have to bleep the most swears out, right? It's what, bring something different. Bring something that my mother can come and criticize when she listens to the podcast. So I'll dive into that. But those are the three things that I think I'm going to do on this podcast. And to really kind of get a little bit selfish and just go, do you know what? I'm going to do this. I've had a crap January. Utterly rubbish. So this is me taking the time to land grab the podcast for a month and be utterly selfish. And Jerry, you get to listen to a podcast rather than be part of it, unfortunately. So for you, my friend, with all the crap that you're going through, this is for you. This is for you to enjoy, listen back, commentate, and then when we're back together, which I'm hoping will be very soon, we can just, you can tell me all my opinions that are wrong. Speaking of, let's go into the opinions of the world. The general world situation. I think, for me, it's compounded the problems that we've had just in general. I'll specifically go for myself, because you look at the news and you just think, what is wrong with people? Some of the other news that I've had in related to the problems that have happened in January is I really had to come to terms with almost like losing hope for decency in this world. And what I mean by that is just doing the right thing. So many people I'm seeing, and it's not even in my opinion, they just don't do the right thing. I don't understand how this common sense is referred to as common sense when it's not, doesn't feel very common, or bits and pieces like that. And I'm sure there's going to be somebody that's going to criticize me and go, remember, that's your opinion, Dom. But I genuinely don't know. I've written down here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 bullet points, but I'm actually going to go to bullet point 7 because I think it's a really good kickstart into what I just cannot fathom. And I would almost love for somebody to just go, where does it come from? Because I get told to look at it from other people's perspectives, but where? Where is this perspective come from? I cannot believe, and I did read this quote, but I cannot believe that we've spent 75 years plus teaching how bad Nazis are, only for the world's superpower being literally controlled by the Nazis. And you look at it and you go, well, hang on a minute. When Nazism was around in Germany, they had the secret police go round, knock on the doors, and find the illegal immigrants. And now you've got in America the ICE, which I can't remember what it stands for, but it's like the immigration division of the. I'm not even sure if it's a police. It's just a federal agency, so I don't even really understand that bit of me. I have to admit, I cannot read and understand it because it makes me literally want to die. Going round on doors, finding people that they think are illegal immigrants, and locking them up in detention cells, splitting them away from the families, exactly like the Nazis are doing. You then have a leader who is brainwashing half of his followers into thinking he's doing the right thing, whether it's lies about, I want the housing prices to go up and down, the affordability within America, the radical left that are pulling this all apart, and then to the point where they're literally murdering people in the street. And you sit there and you read this and you think, I don't quite understand how the world can even think this is okay. Anybody can think this is okay. There's no justification for it. There's nothing on this planet that I can see from your perspective on why you would do that, other than the fact you want greed and problems. And this is going to get me into trouble, but where I've lacked the understanding to see the decency within this world, my fundamental belief is there is no immigration issues. There is no race problems, sexual problems. In terms of what I mean by that is we shouldn't be making an issue about it. There is purely one race, and that's the human race. So we should just treat each other with kindness and decency and respect, and understand that you need to look after the person next to you, and they should then look after you. The whole premise of politics shouldn't exist, right? It's a concept that's been developed for powerful people to assert their power on people. I mean, the actual definition of politics, right? And this is the second one. There is a part around it's a governmental element, but governments were built to serve the people, so politics shouldn't be involved, right? You should be, how can you better yourselves? Activities aimed at improving someone's status or increasing power within an organisation is the second political bit, right? And it's all about governmental power. It just shouldn't exist. It shouldn't exist. If we were looking at it from a common sense and logical perspective, those people that can and have the good ideas that will fundamentally make the world better should be in positions where they can help and influence. That humility and the definition of being able to be almost like being a decent moral fibre should be so much more revered than those that have money or power or greed and bits and pieces. And do not get me wrong, maybe money is the wrong term, because there's this blanket, right? All immigration is bad. All illegal immigrants are bad. All billionaires are bad. All, etc. And I think it's this blanket division within the world that is really starting to get to everybody, right? This whole left versus right, right? Do not get me wrong. I absolutely think that Nigel Farage is a complete idiot. He is selfish. He's money grabbing. He's racist. And I cannot understand why anybody would follow and see what he thinks, because he will go down the further division and conquer. He will truly split kind of the UK country into the right and left wing. And as something goes more extreme to one way, the other side are going to go more extreme the other way. And you get a bigger divide. You get more. And it should just be a case of, what is the need of the UK? It's to serve a government. It's to serve the UK people in the best ways possible and create an environment where we are welcoming and encouraging for people to come across. I don't care if you come from anywhere else in the world, right? If you want to come live in the country, please do it. I think that's a great thing. I think the things that make us different are the things that make us amazing. The beliefs that we all held should be shared. They shouldn't be forced. That's absolutely something I don't believe in. But I just have to speak on the utter lunacy that seems to be coming up around the world with just Trump. And I wanted to use the podcast as a bit of a platform for me to just say, I don't necessarily think that I'm a good person. It's a weird statement to sort of say that. And some people would say by saying that makes you. And I don't believe that. I think the actions are what make you a good person. I inherently have an ego. I inherently have, a mild, how to phrase it. We all have some mild selfishness. Like we want to kind of preserve. We want to kind of build that legacy. It's one of the reasons why I did the podcast, right? Why else would I have like a platform where I could say whatever the heck I want to a certain with a certain amount of comeuppance? I could say what I want, but now I get to put it on the internet and people maybe listen to it. And which is why I don't think I should be in charge of any policy making or anything like that. And the struggles that I've had this month, I think, really reveal where like my ability to deal with people's unkindness, frustrations, emotions is limited, right? And I think there are much better people at dealing with that than myself. I do have an intolerance to intolerance, I think is the best way to put it. I think the extremes, the negative, and anyone that lacks any sort of humility, I think, it is part of what I don't appreciate. I'd like to point out, by the way, I'm just reading back my 7 points. I've not followed any of them. I'm trying to express an opinion that Trump's an idiot. I cannot believe anyone thinks that he's in any way, shape or form that. And the reason why I got into I don't think I'm a good person is because actually now I've got to the stage where I am swinging and I can feel myself being divisible or, split from those that do like him, like completely. And I'm entitled to my freedom of speech and my opinion, and that also means that my freedom of speech and opinion is entitled to be ridiculed. That's the point of it. And maybe there is a balance somewhere where you go, how do we bring ourselves a bit closer together? How do we kind of talk to each other and really understand that 9 times out of 10, we don't want different things. We want the same things, but we're trying to get a different way. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm sure that Reform would quite like to have a national health service that served everybody. Maybe not. I mean, there's certainly times where I've looked at some of the policies and gone, I'm not sure you do, but anyway, right? But if you take it slightly, Conservatives versus Labour, both want a good NHS service. They just think of different ways to do it. So our politics shouldn't exist in there. They should be going, actually, mathematically or fundamentally, what is successful? If I change this in an organisation, does it change the organisation for better? Oh, yes, it does. Brilliant. Let's continue down that path. Oh, no, it doesn't. Let's change the path. That, to me, is the way to do it. And unfortunately, politics gets in the way then of going, yeah, I know it was better when we did this, but because I'm now in charge now, we're just going to do it differently regardless. That is politics that I don't think should exist, because we're just trying to solve a bunch of problems. So, I don't know. I don't know how long this rant was going to be. I'm at 22 minutes, so again, I've not really planned this. We don't really plan these things, and when we record the normal podcast, I just talk, which I'm very good at, apparently. My report cards from school: worked very hard, got good grades, talked too much. Standard. I wanted to just kind of give that an expression. Trump's an idiot. We're not here for it, and I'd like the world to change, to be more positive and to look at things better, to solve the actual problems, and to understand that immigration is not a problem, greed is a problem, selfishness. Like, if you're a person that did something wrong, I don't care whether you are English, Welsh, Indian, Dutch. If you did something wrong, you should be punished for it. If you made a mistake, you should be slapped on the wrist. Don't do that again. But just because you're an immigrant, you shouldn't be punished for it. Similarly, just because you're a billionaire, you shouldn't be punished because you're a billionaire, but you should be encouraged to do the right thing. Pay your goddamn taxes, etc. Anyway, I'm going to stop my opinionated rant on that one. It was more of a chance for me to perhaps get something a little bit off my chest that's bothering me. It's very difficult when your personal day-to-day life is difficult, as I mentioned at the beginning, and then you go and look at the news and you just think, what is wrong with people? Why haven't you impeached him? Like, the destruction on the world and bits and pieces is insane. Right. Let's do the more important thing that kind of gets me fired up. So I am going to insert here, potentially, post-production Dom. Now. Hello, lovely people. Post-production Dom here, as I promised that I would be. So, if you're not interested in any of the Formula One and genuinely want to skip this and would just rather hear about mine and Jerry's tomfoolery from just me, skip to 1 hour and 12 minutes. Pretty much bang on, including this 30-second interval. Love you, bye. I don't know why I froze, but I didn't need to froze because it would just be a cut. But post-production Tom will tell you when the F1 section is over. So if you're really not interested, you can skip this section. I'll put it in a chapter as well. The spoiler alert, I do the editing for these podcasts. I say editing, I get the podcast, I chop the beginning off when we talk utter nonsense before I've said hello lovely people, and then I don't even chop the end off, I just hit stop recording, which is why you occasionally get Jerry laughing at the end or going, that was fantastic, because I mean he's right, but that's the type of stuff that makes me laugh to hell. F1. So for those of you that don't know, I am a big F1 fan. I think everybody knew that. This year, 2026, has introduced the biggest set of regulation changes ever, which means that it's a complete reset of the field and hopefully back to some more exciting racing. It's simpler, it's better for the environment, which I'm very passionate about. Ironic when you like motorsport. It's probably, actually, I'd say, judging by the number of laps that they've done in this secret testing, maybe slightly less physical, which is probably the only shame. But it's just so exciting. And what I'm going to do like two things. I've got a collection of like predictions that I want to make, and then see how I did at the end. And if I was doing the full season for the podcast that I wanted to do, I would have made these predictions and I would have had short, concise episodes, like one before, one after a race, and gone into drivers and analysed a bunch of stuff. And it would have been proper, you know, a real mix of the P1 podcast by Matt and Tommy, to Tomo's Chinwag, which is another F1 podcast, you know, just all those things. So the journalistic, where they rate drivers. However, some of the ratings that some of these journalists give, I think they pull out of their backside and didn't watch the race, because crumbs alive, I'd like to know what race they were watching. And I think that's why I'm so excited about the F1, is because I see all of the other drivers. But with the huge regulation changes, I'm going to try here and talk about all of the regulation changes. Now, I've written them down. There's been plenty over the years, whether that was like in the 1970s where they introduced like floor skirts so you could get ground effect, whether that when they first introduced aero in the 1960s, where they changed engines to have turbochargers, non-turbochargers, four-wheel drive, traction control, active suspension, all those types of things. They kind of put in bigger and bigger, like either governance or stricter costs. But generally what then happens is that it becomes a bit more of a speckish sport with like loopholes that teams try and look through. And then the technical regulations are very strict. I think it's something ridiculous, like 400 pages of technical regulations. They're quite dry, but if you read them, and if you're an F1 team, you will do. What I'll probably do, I've been watching Formula One probably since early 2000s, during like the Michael Schumacher era. So Mika Hakkinen won in 2000 and 2001, or was it 99, 2001? Villeneuve, I think, was 99. And then I saw, Schumacher win a lot of his championships, the 5 of them, post-Benetton days, when he was in the Ferrari. Obviously, I've seen Lewis win all 7 of his, 2008, and then 2016 onwards, minus 2018, which was Nico Rosberg. That's off the top of my head. Max Verstappen, etc. Those are the things. So I've only really seen 2 reasonable big regulation changes. So I'm going to try and compare them with that, because I think that's what most people will do. So we will start with the power unit. So previous generations, back in sort of like 2000s, we had big V8s, dirty V8s that made a racket, lots of big noise, sounded wonderful, but not the most sustainable. They moved to 1.6 V6s, 1.6 litre V6s. 1.6 litres is not a lot, by the way. It always amazes me how the Americans managed to put in a 7.5 litre engine into a Dodge Viper or something like that and only produce about 200 brake horsepower, and then we could have a 2-litre engine and get 400 brake horsepower. It's just mental. But the 1.6 litres normally run about 500 to 600 brake horsepower, maybe a bit more. Last generation, they were hybrids, so they had a battery that you could then use to kind of supplement and give it extra performance. This new regulation change is changing that to be 50-50. So 50% of your power comes from electrical, 50% power comes from internal combustion, and you then need to use balance the internal combustion. The interesting fact from that is it means it's about 471 brake horsepower from the electrical energy, which means it's obviously about 470 brake horsepower for the other bit, although I'm sure that they were brushing 600. So we're talking, these cars put up about 1,000 horsepower just to the rear wheels with no traction control. Anyone that's driven a rear-wheel drive car with no traction control in the wet, it's really difficult. The main other change, so within the engine, there was the MGU-H and the MGU-K. I have to admit, I confess, I don't know what MGU stands for off the top of my head, and I didn't write it down, but the H and the K stand for heat and the K stands for kinetic, and they're the part of the engine that pulls power back into it, so recharges the battery. So 3 ways to charge the battery in the old format. You just use the engine as a generator, a bit like a normal generator. So sometimes when you would go around a corner, the engine would still be relatively high revs as it charges the engine. Not great for sustainability, but it is what it is. Then you'd have the MGU-H, which was a heat recovery. Causing petrol to go bang like this is hot. For those of you that have a combustion car, you will notice that your engine gets hot. That's because you're making mini explosions. That heat has to go somewhere, and there was a process that they could take that heat and turn it into electrical energy. That was the MGU-H, and the MGU-K is the kinetic. So when you press the brakes, the rear brakes, it's only on the rear brakes. Part of that would recover using the braking system into the battery, same as what electric cars do, and probably hybrid cars do for that. In this new era, regulation change, they've removed the MGU-H. It had no presence on a road car. There's not enough heat to do it. If any of you have read The Martian, they talk about it's the radioactive isotope kind of generator, RTG, and it's like Andy Weir, who wrote that book, is fairly scientific as an ex-software engineer, and they talk about like 1,500 watts of heat actually only accounts to 100 watts of electricity, so it's not very efficient to use heat, and there's no such thing as an MGU-H in cars. The MGU-K is very relevant to cars, so they ditched the MGU-H, which was expensive, not very efficient, not relevant to cars, so they've just got the MGU-K, which means now you've got bigger battery, same amount of power as previously, and one less way to recover it. So battery management's really important. It's going to provide a load of racing where a driver may have like no battery left and someone may have a full battery, and they can press the button and, well, hey, off they go. And we'll talk about the other active aeros and bits and pieces that are coming in. New suppliers. So previously you had Renault, Ferrari, Mercedes, Honda. Those are the 4 supplying engines. So for example, there's a Mercedes team, the Mercedes engine, but the Mercedes engine actually also went in the McLaren, and it also went in the Williams, and then you had the Ferrari that went in the Ferrari and the Haas. You had the Honda that went in the Red Bull and the Racing Bulls. That was the 10 teams. So that's how it used to be. We actually have removed a supplier, so Renault are disappearing, and because of these new regulations getting rid of the MGU-H, it's meant that both Audi and Ford have decided to enter and produce an engine for teams. So complete changes on that, which means that's exciting. 5 engine suppliers are now trying to build these engines better. There's loads of rumours as well, by the way. So in the technical regulations, they need to... This is going to be really nerdy, and this shows how much I love F1. When an engine piston goes up and down, at the top, there is a gap that's left, even when it's at full compression. And the difference between kind of that gap and the piston bore length gives you a compression ratio. So you normally get something like... I think most cars are sort of like 1 in 8, and then and the smaller the compression ratio, so a 1 in 15 or 1 in 17, right? The more horsepower you generally produce. Previous technical regulations, if up till 2025, the compression ratio had to be 1 in 18, which is quite a lot, and wonderful, right? Great. And it just said it needs to be 1 at 18. So whenever you measured the engine, 1 at 18. The new technical regulation says 1 in 16. But it says in there that the compression ratio must be at 1 in 16 at ambient temperatures. So there's this big rumours that teams, these engine suppliers have actually gone on to put a small kind of... or use materials and understood thermodynamics that materials expand. So the smaller the gap, the better the compression ratio. So if I shrink the gap, 1 in 16, 1 in 18, for example, and 1 in 18 is better. So if you put in a material that expands at heat, you suddenly get a 1 in 18 ratio, which naturally happens as the engine warms up. And then when the engine is then measured at ambient temperature, as in the engine's cooled down, suddenly your compression ratio is legal at 1 in 16, depending on how much that is. Those are the rumours. And the rumours is that Mercedes and Ferrari have both managed to exploit that, and the Ford that's in the Red Bull and Racing Bulls. So lots of cool stuff that's happening around all of that. And then the final change, if there wasn't enough change, and that's just for the engine, by the way, I haven't got to the rest of it. The final change is the sustainable fuels. So all of the fuels either have to be fully sustainable or synthetic. And you may be thinking, well, that doesn't really matter. Well, absolutely it does. The aim for the F1 is to be, I think they said net zero, or was it carbon zero? There is a slight difference. I think it's carbon zero, not net zero. And the idea being is that eventually all our fuel will be synthetic. So teams or producers like Petronas are going to be working on these fuels for the F1 to develop fuels that make their car go faster and win lots of stuff, and then they get more money for winning lots of stuff, and then they can develop for the real world, and then they can sell it to petrol stations, and then suddenly we can have net zero synthetic fuels for all our vehicles, and we might not need to have all these electric cars, he says, having just bought an electric car. But then you could then use that synthetic fuel to power other things. The cycle continues, right? So it's all about moving in the right direction. If they get the sustainable fuels correct, and you've already got Formula E, so why would you want you don't want a Formula E.5 or a Formula 1.5, which is where, this is what it is, it's 50-50. Absolutely, I think you should keep some electrical element to it to give the drivers a bit more to do that. But they're talking about, well, maybe we can ditch the turbochargers, use sustainable fuels, and put V8s back in, and then we've got the noise and the atmosphere and bits and pieces. I'll explain the secret testing in a minute now, because I think it's worth knowing. But because of the regulation change being so big, they've asked for the teams, all 11 of them, have asked for a private test where they control the output, because they know it's going to be during reliability issues and things like that. That always happens at the beginning of regulation change. And then they've got the official 2 sets of tests. So they're currently in Barcelona, Catalonia, to do their private test. They're allowed to run 3 out of the 5 days. It's Friday, so everybody's run. I haven't watched the program that tells me about the Friday, because it's not out yet. It will probably be out in about an hour and a half. And yeah, so they're currently running around there, and you can see kind of like you get some lap times and bits and pieces, but it's really controlled. And then they got the 2 other tests. So yeah, the engines that you've heard actually sound good. It's kind of a mix of a TIE fighter and the 1.6 engine from previous. I don't know what it is, but electric still makes some sort of noise in certain cases. There's a bit of a TIE fighter noise at it. And for those that know, I think that Star Wars produced the best sounds known to man. Anyway, that's just the power unit and everything that powers the car. So onto the cars themselves. They are going to be 20 centimeters shorter, and the wheelbase is also coming in as well, so they'll be more agile. They're going to be 10 centimeters narrower, and they're going to be 30 kilograms lighter. Now, those don't sound like big numbers, especially as they normally quote them in millimeters, so that's like 200 millimeters and 100 millimeters and, you know, etc., 300 grams. But it's 3,000 grams, sorry. But it is noticeable. If you look at the cars, they do look smaller, which is good because the cars were too big. Your overtaking opportunities with the cars that size were limited. You go to places like a track, like I'm trying to think of a good overtaking track now. Was there really a good overtaking track? I mean, Silverstone is a pretty good overtaking track, but that's because it's a big, wide track. But they'd race around places, well, Monaco's a really good example, but that's always been rubbish. Controversial opinion, I think Monaco's overrated. But even in Saudi Arabia, on their street circuit, or Baku was okay because you had a 7-lane wide street circuit, but it was difficult to overtake. To get 2 cars. And just by shrinking them a little bit, you can already see that they look better. In fact, they look like cars from the 2000s. They don't look like the fat, bloated cars that we've had for the last sort of 10 years or so, especially. On top of that, they've got smaller tyre widths. So the width of the tyre, as you look at it face on, is 2.5 centimetres smaller that way, and 3 centimeters smaller on the rear. So in your normal road car, your wheels would be the same front and back, except for if you drive like a Porsche or maybe a high-end BMW. But generally, you can then do what they do is they can swap your wheels. So you normally swap your right left with your front right, and you sort of rotate them, especially as most cars are either front or rear drive, so you tend to burn out a few tyres quicker. In F1 cars and in racing, generally your rear tyres will be bigger. That's why you go to if you go to a drag strip, you see it with these huge tyres, and it especially as all the power is going through the rear wheels. 4-wheel drive less so, which is why rally cars generally have the same size. But that means that they have less contact patch, so the grip is less. And basically what that's to entail is to give Pirelli, who make the tyres, the opportunity to create tyres that wear but give consistent grip throughout until they fall off a cliff, which means that you get more pit stops and stuff like that. And also we get like different strategies and different, someone might be able to make the tyres longer, somebody might not, and then suddenly someone might fall off a cliff, bits and pieces. They still run 18-inch rims, so for those, that's as you look at the tyre, it's this, the rim of the car, not the tyre. For context, 18 inches is not actually that big. They used to run 13 inches, and then you'd have like a massive sidewall, lots of rubber, and they've shrunk that again because more rubber generally means you can generate heat in a different way, and it'll flex more, so you've got more grip. With slightly less rubber, it kind of is a little bit different, although you then get to a certain low profile and bits and pieces like that. I think my car actually has 18 inches, but I've got an eco car, so it's then like this. So there's less flex in the tyre. So that's like another change. And then the really big change is, and I haven't actually written it all down, so I'm going to have to remember some of this, but they've completely changed the way that the cars are then able to overtake each other and do a little bit of drag. So in previous times, what would happen, everything was fixed on the car, and there was all these controversies about using bendy wings that would bend at speed to create more downforce, and then they'd unbend, less drag and more downforce, and then you'd do that. I've not got to the aerodynamics, but this is more about the cars themselves and the way that they would do things. In terms of like aids that the driver had, obviously you had the electrical energy, but it was a small amount because it was a small battery and not that much horsepower. It's about 160 horsepower. It's now nearly 470. So, you know, you could get a little bit of a boost, but it wasn't the be-all and end-all. Then you had to overtake, you had this thing called DRS. So, drag reduction system, which does exactly what it says on the tin. It reduces the drag. What this looked like was a slot opening in the rear wing, which drivers didn't actually like that much, and I'll explain why. But what it did is it basically reduced the drag being the thing that holds the car back in the air, and allowed you basically to gain a higher top speed. And depending on the track, you could have an extra 12 to 20 kilometers an hour more than the person in front. You were only allowed to use it on certain straights, and only if at the detection point you are within 1 second of the car in front. So if you take, for example, the like Silverstone, you get the drag reduction system down what's known as the hangar straight, but the detection zone is actually just at the end of Maggots and Beckett's. So you go round, you have to follow the car close enough through the corners, which was hard because of dirty air, which makes the aerodynamics work less. So you had to really do that. You would cross the line. If you're within 1 second, you would have the ability, you would be allowed to open DRS. You open DRS, and using a slipstream and the additional or the less drag that you now have, and you didn't need to worry about dirty air because you didn't need the aerodynamics at this point because you weren't going around a corner. You just needed the straight line speed. And usually they got quite good at getting it to the point that instead of it just being like this and you are faster done, it would just be enough to just bring you side by side, and then it basically lasted the late breakers. Like, still full Daniel Ricciardo, lick the stamp and send it. That's now gone. One of the reasons the drivers hate it is because it was only on the rear wing. So you had a car that was planted, with the aerodynamics pushing the car down, and then suddenly you change the aerodynamics just at the rear, and it makes the rear unstable. Right? And most people would never have experienced this, but if you've got an unstable car, if you drive a BMW and you plant your foot, it's going to spin. It's more likely to spin. It's more likely to come into problems that way. So that was okay, but there was an accident last year in Japan when Jack Doohan still had his DRS, went to turn the corner, and the back of the car came out. Big smash, big bill as well. It's expensive. If you write off a car, it's like £1 million. That's gone. So there are now 3 new options, and they are all a bit different. So the new cars are, with the battery power, are going to run out of battery more likely in the lap. And so it's going to be harder to get to the same top speeds. So they've come up with what they're going to use active aero. Now, if you actually look at active aero at the moment, it's basically DRS at the back. It's just a slot that opens up. But it also, they changed it so the front flaps of the front wing also go down. And they want teams to make that equal. So suddenly the drivers, instead of having less downforce at the rear and the same amount of downforce at the front, which makes the car very nose heavy, both are going to just flap down. And so your car will still have the same balance, but you'll have less drag and you'll just go faster. And anybody can use it at any point on the straights. Well, actually, it says you can use it anywhere. So it's, if you want to risk it around a corner, but you don't necessarily want to do that because sometimes you want more aerodynamic pull in the corner so you can take the corner faster and then activate it when you feel safe. So it's going to be about doing that. And I think it also automatically comes off when you apply the brakes, as it did with DRS. So but that's for everybody to use. And what that will allow them to do is to get higher top speeds. Otherwise, at places like Monza, you're just going to end up with a car that runs out of battery halfway down the straight. And they were looking at it, and the cars accelerate a lot, and then they would like just do that, or in some cases they might just do that as they run out of electrical power. And for those that are listening, I'm making a curve with my hand where you get up, accelerate, then you'd flatten or even come down in terms of speed, because you just run out of power. That's going to be used for everywhere. Then you have the battery, which you can deploy at any point. Now, the battery being bigger and with one less recovery element, it's all about going to be managing. What you don't want to be doing is like running out of battery halfway through the lap, and the person that's behind you has saved their battery and kept within your distance, and suddenly they've still got more battery that they can use because you're going to be down 470 brake horsepower, which is a lot. Most cars that people drive only have between 100 and 200 brake horsepower because that's all they need. So yes, that's obviously quite a significant amount, and something that you're going to see a lot of management. So that's going to be all about that, and they can do that. There is a push to pass or a overtake mode, which is going to be about that, to do with that 1 second back, and that is where you'll have the ability to dump the battery. And what I mean by that is you dump all the electricity and you can shoot forward, and you have to be within 1 second, but instead of DRS, where you can only use it at certain points, you can use it wherever you want in the lap. So there'll be a reserved bit of battery that's almost for that. You still need to charge the battery, so you've got that enough. You could overuse it and use too much, but that like kind of ability, that overtake mode or boost mode, is kind of like the new DRS. But because it's whenever you're in 1 second of lap, you don't need to wait to use it on specific straights. So we get this kind of, or DRS trains where the front person's set up their car that's really not draggy, and the people behind him just put their DRS on and then they can't catch, but everybody behind them can't catch. So it will be, you could use it in a corner, and the best example I can be is if you go to the Miami chicane, which is really thin, and nobody overtakes here because the next bit is a DRS zone. Whereas now somebody might, well, actually, I've got the overtake mode that I can use. I'm just going to dump the electric, woof, and shoot through on the chicane when they're not expecting it. And then afterwards, I'll go down the straight because I know that I'm less draggy anyway, and off we go. So plenty of opportunities, and it's one detection zone per lap. So, you get a chance to get away, and it's not this, but it'll be good. It'll be good. So really excited. There's a lot more things. I've talked for about 20 minutes about this. And then the biggest change is the aerodynamics. So last season they had what they call ground effect cars. So I'm not an aerodynamicist, but essentially what they did is, instead of a flat floor, they had like big tunnels in the floor, and they tried to get the cars as low as possible to the ground. This generates like a vortex, which, there's no other word for it, sucks the car to the floor and makes it like drags it down to the floor, and does that. Previous generations of cars, it was based upon the air running over the car, and basically you just ran like an upside down airplane wing. Like the way that an airplane wing works is, as the air goes over the top, one side goes over faster because it's flatter, and the top side goes slower, which then pulls the wing up, and that's how you get flight. And most F1 cars are basically an airplane wing upside down, so they're just pulling you to the floor, which means that you get more grip, which means you can take the corner faster. Now, you'll have heard that about porpoising, or these ground effect cars, which is where it sucks the car too close to the floor, the car touches the bottom of the floor, which causes the suspension to lift and causes the vortex to be interrupted, so the car goes up, and then the vortex kicks back in and pulls the car down, and then it hits the floor and goes and stalls the vortex, and you go up, and you just get this kind of like jiggly called porpoising as it goes along. And it means that teams ran the cars as low as possible because you wanted as much downforce. There was problems with McLaren last year wearing out their plank because there's a legality. There's a metal strip on the bottom of the plank, which is why the cars spark. So every time it touches the floor, it would spark. that can only be worn a certain amount. If you ran your car too low and you scraped all of the metal away, you'd be disqualified because that's not legal. So that's all gone. We've gone back to over the top aero, I suppose, is the key thing, and the documentation about the limitation and restrictions is massive. But actually, they've reduced the complexity of it. So there's a lot, like there's less wings and stuff like that. They got rid of what they call the wheel brows. So if you looked at the old cars, they'd have like an extra bit over the top of the wheels, which to try and stop some of the turbulence, because air gives turbulence. But it means that there's like, and it means the floor's flat. But this changes a load of things around how the car works, and why I'm very excited, because I'm a big fan of Lewis Hamilton, and to be blunt, he just never got on with the ground effect cars. His driving style just didn't meet that. But now he's back in a over-the-top aero car. Great. Lick the stamp and send it, all the trail braking he wants to do. But also it means that you can run the cars at different heights. So you'll hear what's quite often called rake. So the rear of the car suspension is almost higher than the front. So you're almost like angling the car like almost like upwards, which puts more airflow around the rear of the car and can change how the aerodynamics work. And it gives the drivers with different driving styles to succeed better, because those that brake extremely late can make the benefit of the air going over. Those that take the corner and do the fast in, fast out will also benefit. There's no disadvantage, and it's just about who can drive the car the best, basically. And it's also softer on the suspension, so in the nicest way possible, we're not going to kill the F1 drivers. I'm not an aerodynamicist, and I probably should be. I'd love to be. How cool would that be? I don't think I'd be. I'm quite talented enough. It is my dream to work for an F1 team, or the F1 itself. I don't know what skills I bring yet. I need to re-find my confidence around that. But there's technical regulations. And then there's a load of more cool stuff. So there's a new team that's joining in the form of Cadillac. So we now have 11 teams and 22 drivers, which is great. Really exciting. More things to go wrong, more things to navigate. There are 2 new power unit manufacturers. So Audi have taken over Sauber, which was Kick-Stake Sauber, and they're making a manufacturer team. So you've now got 2 German superpowers in, Audi, which is the VAG groups, Audi, Volkswagen, Skoda, etc., and loads of other things. And you've also got Mercedes with Mercedes and Mercedes engines. So there's going to be a little bit of bragging rights between those two. Cadillac are using Ferrari engines. It's always weird. Both the 2 American outfits now, Haas and Cadillac, both use Ferrari engines. But Cadillac and General Motors do have an intention to make their own engine, especially as the other American superpower, Ford, have teamed up with Red Bull and are making their own powertrains as well. So just loads of changes. Really excited. You've got 2 returning drivers in Cadillac. So pretty much all the teams retained their drivers this year. There wasn't that much movement. So Mercedes, George Russell, Kimi Antonelli. Ferrari is still Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc. Then you've got McLaren is still Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri. Aston Martin is still Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. Williams is still Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz. I've only done 10 drivers. Cool, I'm so testing myself. Haas is still Ollie Behrman and Esteban Ocon, or Esti Besti. Alpine is still Pierre Gasly and Franco Colapinto. Oh, God. What teams have I now missed? That's going to be really annoying. Red Bull. So Max Verstappen. So the first change, Max Verstappen is still at Red Bull. They promoted Isaac Hadjar to Red Bull, and they dropped Yuki Tsunoda. And then you got Liam Lawson and the new rookie, the only rookie, is Arvid Lindblad, who is of Swedish and Indian descent and races under the British flag. Don't know either. Then you've got Audi, which is Nico Hulkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto. And then the two new drivers for Cadillac are Valtteri Bottas, who was Lewis's partner for much of his 7 World Championships, and Sergio Perez, who I think is underrated. I quite like Sergio, but Bottas is one of my favourite drivers, so super excited to have them back in. So yeah, I think that's all the changes. Holy moly, I reckon I've been talking for about 25 minutes just about the changes, if not more. So sorry if I've bored everyone, but I'm very excited for these rules and regulations that are coming in. It's so unpredictable. And with it being so unpredictable, I'm going to make some predictions. Because I think that's cool. So I've stolen this shamelessly from the P1 podcast, a podcast that I don't listen to regularly, but I sort of dip in and out. The reason I don't listen to it regularly is because as a person with a full-time job and hobbies and wants to stay fit and a new house that I'm trying to build up, they put out like 4 podcasts over the weekend. Like they do a podcast before, then they do a podcast after qualifying, and then they do a podcast after the race, but they may also do another one. I just couldn't keep up, right? It just was too much, and I felt like I missed something if in the race, after the race podcast, they referred to something that they said in the other one, and it's too much. So I don't listen to it regularly, but I enjoy listening to their season predictions and their race predictions, and then seeing what they did, and then seeing how they rate the drivers. Those are the things that I really enjoyed. So I've shamelessly stolen. I've got 5 categories. I've not done all their categories, but I've got 5 main categories. So you've got Constructor Champion. Who do I think out of the teams together is going to win? You've got the Drivers' Championship. Who is going to be the one that comes out on top out of all the drivers, regardless of whether they're Constructor 1 or not? And then I've got 3 other things. I've got a good surprise. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win like the World Championship or anything, but who does everyone think will be like, they'll be rubbish, or they're going to be average, and actually they come out and they're perform much better than we expected. Biggest flop. Who do we think is going to be the biggest flop? Who do we think is not going to perform anywhere near as much as expectation? I've got a thing down here, but I also am going to say something else as well. And then I've got craziest prediction. What do we think is going to happen through the season that's just a bit out there, but could happen? So without further ado, I shall go on to... I'm going to start with the Constructors' Champion. And for me, I am going to... Not bold, I've actually followed the rumours on this one. There is rumours that Mercedes were the first to get the compression ratio right. And so that they have done what they did in 2014, which is they got the regulations right and they're going to be ridiculously quick. The secret testing suggests that. At the time, I've seen 4 of the days, and they've run 3 of their 3 days that they can run, 4 of the 5 days. They've done a 502 laps, which is a 10 race distance effectively around Catalonia. Near enough. Let's say definitely over 9. And which is insane. So their reliability is good, and there's room, and they've been top of the timing sheets. Ferrari have beaten that today. I saw just before, but I don't know how, with that reliability from Mercedes, you don't really know what they could turn their engine up. They can't do party modes like they used to be able to do, but yeah, their package looks good. They look like they've, and they were always good in the aero days. That's how Lewis won so many championships, even right up to 2020. So I've gone Constructors' Championship Mercedes. I think that's the sensible choice. George Russell is very strong. Kimi Antonelli has got a lot of hype. I think he's a bit overrated, and I think George has been very unlucky and underutilized. His 3 years at Williams, I think he should have been promoted earlier. So yeah, I've gone for Mercedes on that, and we'll see how close I am for that, and we'll definitely do a podcast at the end of the season, which will probably be it'll be the January podcast 2027, because the season finishes on the 9th of December. So yeah. Drivers' Champion. Now, I have gone out there for this one because I don't think it's going to be a Mercedes driver. I think that George Russell and Kimi Antonelli will take points off each other. They will one will win, then the other will win, then one will win, then the other will win, or something like that. And so you'll need a driver who will almost solo it. I think that McLaren are not going to be as good or strong, even though they won Constructors with 6 races left last year. I think they've spent too much time in that one, and they tend to get it wrong, and then they're very good at getting it right. So they will have a resurgence, but I don't think they're going to win it. I also don't think that the first year as Adrian Newey and the Honda engine will work for Aston Martin. I think there'll be some teething troubles, and it'll be 2 years that will come good. And Ferrari will do Ferrari things, and they will fuck up the strategy so much. So I actually think, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I actually think this will be Max Verstappen's 5th world title. I've got an inkling that he will be the quickest to adapt to the new cars. I think that Red Bull looks very strong and quick, and they always produce a good, quick car. And even though all the drivers have said that these cars are much easier to drive, I don't particularly like him. I think some of the comments that he says and some of the things that he's done, I think are idiotic. But I said that about most drivers, and you normally grow to them. I think he's getting better, as with all. But I've just got this inkling that I think he's going to do it this again. I don't know why. I just think, yeah, sod it. I've gone Max Verstappen for the Drivers' Champion. But Red Bull will not be Constructors' Champion. I think because Isaac Hadjar is great, but I just don't. Again, it's just nobody's the caliber of Max Verstappen. Good surprise. Who do I think is going to be a good surprise for this F1 season? I have gone for actually an American outfit, and I've gone for Cadillac. I think as a new team, everybody will write them off. They will expect to be at the bottom of the timing sheets. They'll be 20th and 21st and 22nd. They'll be 11th in the Constructors' Championship, and I think you'll be surprised. I don't know why. I think because they've been working on this for 2 years with no other distractions, I think they might have got it right. And I don't think they're going to win, but normally you've got kind of McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari as the top 4, so sort of like the top 8. I think Cadillac will be up there. I think they'll be still sneaking in to the top 10, and every now and then a P5 or a P6, especially with someone like Valtteri Bottas and Perez, who are just super reliable. They're in cars that they're familiar. Neither of them got on with the ground effect cars as well. Those that have driven air effect cars before, I think, will adapt really quickly and will be really, really quick. And then Max Verstappen is just quick all the time. So I think Cadillac's going to be a good surprise for this one. Biggest flop? Biggest flop has been a bias, because I've never really liked this team. I never really liked them as Renault. And I don't really think they're great now. I think it's because of the way they keep introducing Flavio Briatore, who I just think is an idiot. But I think Alpine are going to be the biggest flop. And I think this is going to be the biggest surprise in terms of biggest flop, because Alpine have ditched using Renault engines despite the fact that they are Renault, Alpine being a sub-brand of Renault. And they're using Mercedes engines, which would mean, great, so we should be quick because they're using Mercedes. I think they're just going to screw it up. I don't know why. I just got an inkling that they're not going to be quick. They weren't quick last season. I think they were 10th. I think they were bottom. Yeah, because Franco Colapinto, I don't think, scored a point, and Pierre Gasly scored 6 points. So yeah, I think they'll be like, oh yeah, they sort of said, we wrote off last year, we're concentrating on this year. I still think they're going to be slow. I just think they will get it wrong. I just think that car will just not have the aerodynamics, and I don't think that they would have integrated the Mercedes engines well. So yeah, I think that Alpine are going to be the biggest flop for this year. And then my craziest prediction, that I will put, and this is really crazy, and I don't think it will. I don't necessarily think it will happen, but it'd be super cool if it does. I have gone for 8 different winners. Now, there are 24 races, and we have had that before. I think 2019, 20 must be 19 when it was a bit mixture, because 2020 was Max Verstappen No, 2020 was a Lewis dominant. 2021 was Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton making mincemeat of everybody. So it must be 2019, where all the cars were good. Like Ferrari had bought had done something with their engine. Red Bull was still strong. Lewis obviously was almost indestructible back then, and it was something like, Lewis won a race, Valtteri won a race, Charles won a race. Who was Charles' teammate back in 2019? Was it Raikkonen? Raikkonen won a race. And then you had Max won a race, and we had about 7 different winners in the first 7 races. And I think, even though the testing looks to be quite strong, this prediction will either come true or will have complete opposite, right? We'll either have 8 different winners across the season, or George will win every single race because Mercedes is so dominant. That's my crazy prediction, but I'm going to go for 8 different winners. I think I'm going to get on the what Matt from the P1 podcast calls the hopium. I'm going to get on the hopium. Give us 8 different winners, make it super exciting and unpredictable, and not necessarily through reliability, but just through the first circuit is Australia, which is a bit more of a power track nowadays because it's really long straights and bits and pieces like that. They had 3 DRS zones originally. Instead, but then we'll be off to places like Japan, which is heavily downforce dependent, but you also need good straight line speed, and then eventually Monaco. And I just think there's so many opportunities that is the craziest prediction that I can come up with. So yeah, there you go. I got to speak about my favourite topic on a solo podcast with nobody criticising me. I'm waiting for the comments. I'm so looking forward to the comments of what I got wrong. But I love it. I'm so excited for this F1 season. It's one of the few things that are keeping me going for this year. I think I'll have to be let me survive January and February and to get to March so I can watch the first race and see what happens. Unfortunately, I was hoping to go to one this year, but Silverstone's already sold out, and the other races that aren't sold out require about $6,000 to go and travel there. I don't want to spend the money on the house this year. So I won't have an interjection from post-production Dom on this side of things because I'll be telling post-production Dom that's likely to be about an hour and 12 minutes now. But there we go. You would have seen post-production Dom. We said, if you're not interested in a Formula 1, skip to this bit. So on to what's next on our podcast. I have ideas. Jerry has ideas. We both have ideas. But I thought I'd use this opportunity while it's just me to have that frank and honest conversation. I was going to make a joke about doing some silence for Swanee because I know that really irritates him because he listens to the podcast while he's in the car. But nah, I got you. I feel like it's like the Archer voice. What is it when you call someone, it goes to the voicemail, and he just goes, "Hello." Nah, I got you. Voicemail. You know what to do. Click. Excellent. We've had some really fun episodes. I think peak was probably for me, not last year, but 2024 was definitely peak. And I use peak in a good sense, not peak as in a bad sense. You crazy Gen Zs. That was our peak. That was when it was really good. We really jovial, really good time, some proper laughs and some proper ridiculousness. And I think early podcast days we were a bit more, not risk adverse, but we just kind of talked about really random stuff. We don't really have specific topics that we go into. I love having guests. That's actually my favourite thing. We've had some great guests. Whether that's Pete with the D&D, whether that's Chats TVT. I really enjoyed having Sean on, even if cricket is not my favourite thing. But he made it entertaining, talked about it, and he's a great guy. I've got some new guests that we'd love to have on. Absolutely love, and we've already tapped them up. I'd love to have existing guests, old guests that we've had on before, back on. Probably after this episode, so you can all ridicule me for I suspect that this podcast is just going to be me being ridiculed for the next year as we go through that, but I'm happy with that. I think that's fine, as long as you're not all too mean to me. You got to be nice and gentle because I've had a rough January, please. We love, as I said, we love having guests, but we would like to. We tend to have guests on and then talk about what we want. So I really want people to come to the podcast with stuff that they're really passionate about. That's what I want the podcast to be, is for people to go, I'm really passionate about this. Can I talk to you and Jerry about it? Yes, please. Teach us some shit. And that's why I wanted the podcast. I've just talked about F1 for the last half an hour plus. And I'd love that if somebody goes, I didn't know about F1, that's cool. We want to do some more in-person stuff. It doesn't work well for an audio podcast, some of the stuff I want to do. It goes down a bit more of the traditional YouTube video. I loved the summer camp stuff that we did. That was so much fun. And the interjections and that. And this podcast was filmed in front of a live studio audience. I think that's so much fun. And Jack, we want to get you back on the podcast in one of these sit-down things and ask you different bits. Because you're Gen Z. Or are you Gen Z? Or are you even the one after it? I don't really know when the cutoff is. Has different opinion. We are really neurodiverse safe, so I want to do more stuff about I call it the lighter side. Almost feels like the lighter side of the news from the Simpsons movie. It's the time when the swallows come back, and then you have the scene where they're in the dome and the swallows crash into the dome. Still a great movie from 2007. That film is nearly 20 years old. That is mental. But also things like, we want to be neurodiverse safe, but we also want to look at it on the lighter side. And I just think that's so much fun. I've said this quote today already, but Fern Brady says, we don't talk about how weird neurotypicals are. And having Katie on and just watching her just go, it was so much fun. I love it. It's my favourite thing. So I think there's that, and we've had a lot of teachers on and people that are now not teachers and stuff like that, and it's good, and we have our regulars, and that's great. But how do we expand and make this podcast useful and fulfilling for people? I didn't have any ambitions with this podcast, and I still don't. This is more about having fun. But if we can give a bit of education or just a bit of light in the world, or an opportunity for people to just come on the podcast and go, this is a bit rubbish and here's my opinion, Room 101, those types of things. I really want to know about it. And maybe it's anxiety in me, but I want to have the right balance between me and Jerry. Right? This is obviously going to be completely unbalanced. This is me being purely selfish. I've had a shit January. I want to rant about stuff, and I'm just going to put it out there. But do we have the right balance between Jerry and I? I introduce it most of the time. The funniest time when Jerry ran the podcast with myself and Chat Stevie T, and just so much fun. But then I get just as much abuse from Hooper and things like that, and love to have you back on, Hooper. But less swearing, so I have to cut less out. That would be grand. And is there just some way that we can change what you want us to bring to podcasts? Right? Just give us some ideas, some bits and pieces. Do you want more visual stuff? Do you want more in-person things? Do you want more stories? What is it that? And or are you just happy? Just tell me you're happy. I want some feedback. Although just the thing to make you all very unhappy is those of you that play it, you have now lost the game. So good. I love the fact that I've got the platform to do that. Even if it's just, I'll roll your eyes back to you as we go. I didn't think that section was going to be very long. It's just a plea, an ask, like and subscribe. The normal YouTube things. I have to admit, I don't watch enough YouTube these days to actually know what the ending of a video is. Interesting. I'll figure that out at some point. Maybe, he says. And on to the bit that's traditional with our podcast, the final thoughts. How sad. I've come to the final thoughts. And this podcast is longer than I expected it to be. Is it? I don't know. Don't really have any anticipations these days. I will say, final thoughts, we will be okay. We have just given a collection of news, and I say we will be okay. I talked a little bit about this with somebody. This is going to get super serious now to end the podcast, but I will end it on some humour. I said to somebody, I will be okay, I'll figure it out. And they gave me a bit of criticism, and they know who they are. They were like, you don't have to figure it out. And I was like, I do, right? And what I mean by that is you aren't at fault for most things in your life, but what you absolutely are is you're responsible for your actions and your reactions to it. We're going through some life-changing things recently. And I suppose for me personally, what hasn't helped is I'm going through these life-changing things, and I've moped about it, which has then put my health in detriment and bits and pieces. So there is an element of taking steps forward to go, well, actually, I could have reacted differently and gone, well, instead of moping about it, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And there's a great book by Mel Robbins called The Let Them Theory. One of my favourite authors. She wrote the 5-second rule, which is how you get stuff done. And the Let Them Theory is what you need to do. And the bit that was eye-opening for me, because I've heard about it, I'll just let them do that. And it basically pertains to the fact it doesn't matter what we, me, you, I, whoever does, we don't have any control over something. We have influence, but we don't have control. I don't have control over Donald Trump. I'm sure people would. It doesn't matter if my poxy little podcast only gets like 20 views on YouTube or whatever it is, or it gets 1 million views. Trump sees it and says, right, we need to go and now bomb the south of the UK because that's where this person lives and we need to go get him. Right? Whatever. I can't control him regardless of what that is. And I wanted to reiterate that these responsibilities that we're taking on have just been a lot. And we wanted to deliver a podcast that's not necessarily better, but just we wanted to be open and honest in the capacity that we had and promise that we will be okay. We'll get through it. I have a real firm belief in other people, not necessarily myself, but sometimes I have to take a step back. And if I look at a positive aspect, I'm 34 years old. I've survived this far. Why can't I survive tomorrow, regardless of what's happening? And it's just keep swimming. But don't get me wrong. If there was a receipt for 2026, we are within the 30-day period, right? So I'd like my money back. I'd like to return it, and I'd like my money back. Can we restart this year over? That'd be grand. Thanks very much. But that's my joke for the day. Folks, if you got this far and didn't think, oh my God, I'm fed up of Dom chatting, you are a hero, and I love you forever. If you get this far, I want you to comment on the YouTube video. I actually want to see like a massive comments of people that actually did it. Even if you listen to it on Spotify, I want you to go over to the YouTube video and add a comment. And I want you to put an emoji of your least favourite vegetable, which is Brussels sprouts, because Brussels sprouts are minging. But that's not the point. Actually, I hope to see a load of mushroom ones as well. Mushrooms, vegetables. I just suddenly had a weird sensation that they aren't vegetables. I don't know why. They make class as something else. Someone's going to tell me I'm an idiot, but they must be vegetables. Least favourite vegetable. Just the emoji. Put it on there. And we'll go... And just to see how many people actually get to this far into the final thoughts. Folks, as always, thank you very much for watching. You might not want to watch this because it's going to be my face that's big on the screen. Thank you very much. It's probably way too late to tell you that. Why have I told you that at 1 hour 23 into recording this podcast? I probably should have, like, does it need like a warning at the beginning? This podcast contains distressing scenes, and it's just my face. Sometimes I make myself laugh. What was I saying? Thank you very much for watching, folks. Thank you very much for listening. We promise that we will be okay, and we hope to be back to our usual shenanigans in the next podcast. We spoke tonight, and we both said, I knew I was going to continue with this to have something for the 1st of February. And we both said that actually we should keep doing this because this is what's going to keep us sane. This is what's going to keep us connected and keep us grounded. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for engaging. Thank you very much for those that send me stuff on WhatsApp or whatever and tell me that I'm wrong. I particularly like it when Samwise tells me I'm wrong, because it's funny, because she doesn't hold back. And we will catch you on the next podcast in a month's time. Bye.